Well, hello once again. Welcome to It's a Frankly Harry podcast. I'm your host, Frank Weber. So glad that you could join me in the forest once again this week. I've got a really great show for you today. I'm going to be doing some fairly serious ranting and raving. Some of it may be kind of controversial. And we'll kind of go from the lighter to the heavier as the show progresses. So please stay tuned. You know, podcasting is a bastion of freedom of speech. That's a bastion, right? Not a bastard. But, and I'm so glad to be a part of it with you each and every week. So I'm going to exercise that right today. As you know, this show has many themes to it. I don't really fit very well into a niche or a niche. I'm the kind of guy who really doesn't fit in great into a lot of places, as a matter of fact. But one of my themes is that I have this ability to look on the world and see it for what it could be, but then in reality, it's actually very, very far from that. And I hope that when I talk on this show and that you listen and digest my words and hopefully be a little entertained by it, that we can all kind of bring it a little bit closer to what it actually could be. And so that's kind of my opening statement there for you. So let me start off here. I have to ask a question. Are there any weathermen out there or weather women who can accurately predict where the snow is going to fall and how much and all that bullshit? I mean, they have like the greatest job in the world because they can be wrong all the time. And I'm saying this because last night I was watching the news. We got this shot of cold air in here, which is another story entirely. But they were saying last night that the snow was only going to go only so far south here in the Texas Panhandle, but not far enough south to where it reaches my house. And lo and behold, of course, I wake up this morning and it's snowing outside, and we have a little more than a dusting on the ground and on the street, and this very thing happened last week as well with the weather predictors, and I think it happens everywhere too. Even my wife thinks the National Weather Service is the best weather predictor, and I think they even got this a little bit wrong where I live here in Canyon. So, and then of course the other thing is the frickin' cold air. Oh my goodness, I think it was in the low 60s yesterday, but it was cloudy, so you kind of felt a little cool still, but today it's only in the teens. So I've got my space heater with me here in the studio, and I don't believe you can hear it. Such weather and such swings is part of the reason why we're probably going to move away here in the next 2 or 3 years. Getting older and very tough to deal with all those swings in weather all the time. A lot of times they're probably not going to be here. They're probably not even over officially till the end of April. I mean, the weather will start to warm up in March and April a lot, but you never know if you're going to get another cold snap or something weird happening. But anyway, that's another weather story that I have to tell you, and we'll go on to some other things now. They just had another running of the Daytona 500 the other day on Sunday, which was, the 16th, I think it was. Of course, my friend Jeffrey Hayes was down there with his family like all weekend. He lives in the area there, and he certainly enjoys that. I think a guy who won it last year won it again this year. Someone named William Byron, who sounds like an English nobleman. Congratulations to him. I didn't see too much of the race. I'm not really into NASCAR as much as I used to be, because I think NASCAR, like a lot of professional sports, doesn't really listen to its fans anymore. It's strayed to something so far from what it was 20 to 30 years ago, and it's really sad. The thing that really bothers me, don't know if I said this before on a show or somewhere. I don't know, but the Daytona 500 is their crown jewel, their Super Bowl of racing, and occasionally they get rain and weather that come in and cause it to be delayed. They had that again this year. I think they were able to finish the race on Sunday, though. The thing that bugs me, though, is why do they always have to start it so damn late? There's a practical side of starting it early, and I know Daytona has lights and they can go into the night and everything like that, but they used to start it, I think, around 12 o'clock Eastern, I think. Even if they started it at 1 o'clock Eastern, it would probably still be okay, but for the sake of the fans who actually buy tickets, it seems reasonable that you should start it early enough in the day in order to try to finish it that day. And instead, they want to start it like, I don't know what time it was over there, like 3:30 or something crazy like that, because they are enamored with finishing under the lights and getting sponsorships for advertising on Sunday nights, which is a lot more money and all that. And then you get a little bit of weather that came in on Sunday. There was some rain, showers, and a cool front, and he said it was kind of a chilly rain, and they were able somehow to get it in, but the fans don't necessarily want to wait out there forever and ever in order to get it done. And some years NASCAR even like tried to move it completely to Monday if there was something on Sunday. And what was it? They even tried to make it like prime time on Monday, and then there's a lot of fans who bought tickets that can't do that. They're going to have to go home by then. So I just wanted to comment on that. I don't know why they can't just start it early like they used to, and because even in a warm place like Daytona, where the weather is generally pretty good in February, unlike here, they do occasionally get some issues. There was one years ago where they actually had a lot of fog, and I think that caused a delay there. I did go one year, I think that was in 2008, and the weather was absolutely spectacular. Nothing to worry about at all there. It was a tremendous time, and anyway, it's just all these issues typically come down to money and economics a lot these days. And like I said, everybody wants to make money, but there's something sacred. There's something of a higher calling that you have to take into account, and you don't have a sport without fans. And it's better to have a bunch of fans that buy tickets and show up at the races. I think the Daytona 500 is one of only a few where there's a sellout or close to a sellout anymore. Most people don't even show up to those things now. But I don't know. Maybe one day I'll go back. They're going to have to make a lot of changes, though. Really disappointed in them. So they seek advertising dollars, they hope, somewhat like the Super Bowl, even though I don't think the ads go for that much. But nowadays they're only a week apart. I did notice the president was there. I hope he had a good time. Really enjoying what he's doing, and we're hopeful and excited about what the future brings for our country. So anyway, now let's go ahead and get into the nitty-gritty of the show. I have a lot of background story as well as the actual story, and I've struggled to decide what exactly I was going to tell you about all this. I haven't really delved too much into controversy on this show, and I don't really want it to sound anti-anybody, but I am going to shout out the authorities and the power figures here. So let me go ahead and got my notes in front of me and see how well I can relate this to you. But so last Thursday, I was taking my wife to the airport. Now, my wife is a legal immigrant, and you may know that legal immigrants are some of the most outspoken people against illegal immigrants, okay? as well as citizens who have been there their whole lives, like me. So I was just taking her to the airport, and she was telling me that I guess she was watching something on YouTube where Caroline Leavitt, I don't know, some crazy reporter was asking her a question, and basically the response was that all illegal immigrants are criminal because even if they're not violent, because they have broken at least one law. I mean, there is a legal way of getting into this country and becoming a citizen, which my wife undertook in 1997. And then there is a lot of wrong ways, illegal ways, if you will. And so she and I are simpatico on this subject. Okay. So I, took her to the airport. She went and visited some family in California, came back late on Saturday night, and then we go to church on Sunday. Now, my wife is devout Catholic. I am not. I typically get kind of bored there. I don't think there's really a lot there for me. But I kind of sacrifice. I kind of do it out of love for her, I guess you could say. But that's not to say that I'm particularly satisfied with what goes on in the Catholic Church from a worship perspective, as well as the issue that I'm about to get into. And I do like some Catholics. I'm very glad that they're here. Some of them are very real and down to earth. That very morning, I read an article by Bill O'Reilly, who admittedly is kind of gruff, and I don't really know too much about his real spiritual life or anything outside of the fact that he's Catholic. He's been a lifelong Catholic. And I read his weekly column, and it was basically about how Pope Francis still does not get the concept of America deporting illegal immigrants who, by the way, because they're illegal, they are also criminal. But I appreciate him for that, because not only is he down to earth, but he stands up to his church's leadership, and kudos should go out for that. There's another guy I really like a lot. Perhaps you've heard of him, actor and director Mel Gibson, who had a really great interview a few weeks ago on the Joe Rogan podcast. You should check it out. Definitely a mature Christian, mature in his faith, and he really takes it to his church, and its leadership he's called the church apostate and a parallel church. He goes after Pope Francis bringing Argentinian idols into the Vatican with him and such. Really glad that he has stepped out and has said things that need to be said as well. So we're at church on Sunday morning, and for the most part, things are business as usual. I'm bored and tired and wondering why I'm there again, and why I'm always distracted in prayer, because there's always some kind of noise going on before the Mass and after the Mass, and my wife tries to pray at both of them, and there's just all this crazy distraction and commotion and kind of bullshit there. But anyway, we sit through the Mass, and it's the same thing as usual, and we get to the very end of the Mass, and the pastor, or the priest, whose name is Alvin from Zimbabwe, who, by the way, I think seems to be a pretty good guy, but sadly he's a minion for his bishop and for the Pope. He decides at the very end of the Mass, after people have done all these spiritual things, to read this letter from the bishop that was probably written by him at the request of the Pope. The bishop's name is Patrick Zurich, and of course the Pope is Pope Francis. I've had the unfortunate pleasure a while ago of meeting Bishop Zurich a couple of times. He's kind of an asshole. But he wrote this letter that was full of lies and propaganda because Pope Francis, I guess, is the instigator of this, was very upset that, well, it might be okay to deport violent illegal immigrants, they were shocked to learn that all the illegal immigrants are trying to be deported. And of course, they're all actually criminals, violent or not. And then, of course, they wind up in the letter talking about various liberal or left-wing talking points like, oh, we're all immigrants, even if you have to go back generations. So you should be happy about that, and that these people are willing to take jobs that Americans would not otherwise want to take. The standard fairly left-wing bullshit, basically, right? And of course, they're doing this. The bishop is doing a lot of browbeating and guilt tripping of the people in that small St. Mary's Catholic Church in Umbarger, who are generally pretty conservative farmers, right of center, and yet he's just simply browbeating them with a message of propaganda and lies. And I, of course, wind up leaving church, angry and upset. Hopefully there were some others that left that same way as well. So let me go into a little bit of an analysis of the situation here. There are several different points. I'm going to kind of do my old, I don't really consider myself Baptist or any kind of real Christian tradition, but I'm going to kind of do a 3-point thing and then a conclusion, essentially. But the first thing is, regardless of what benefit you feel like you derive in church, wherever that church is or what flavor they are, you should never, ever have to leave church angry or upset or in some kind of negative frame of mind. And that's exactly what this bishop did the other day with his shitty piece of shit letter. It basically negates whatever benefit you received that day in the Mass or the service. It's kind of ignorant as well that there's a relationship between the parishioners and their church itself. It's kind of supposed to be a little bit like your personal relationship with Jesus, in your Christian walk. So anyway, that's not good. I'm not saying it's always going to be high and great feelings all the time in church, but like to leave upset after a otherwise, pedestrian day in church is not a good thing. The second thing about this is this constant emphasis for a number of years, I guess going back really at least till the 50s or maybe World War II. I don't know, as they really exploded in the 60s, where a lot of groups which are primarily charged with doing something else, churches are supposed to, go, they're supposed to enact the Great Commission and go and tell others about Jesus Christ, and if they accept and God leads them to Christ, perhaps they will come to your church. But a lot of times I don't feel like a lot of these organizations, that's really their mission anymore. They've gotten so far into issues of social justice and various social issues that they may have a very valid tangential concern about, but that's not mainly what they're supposed to be doing. I struggled for a lot of years, just to give you a little historical background here, but both of the political parties in the last 60 years, maybe a little bit more, have been weakened by taking on certain social issues that are important to some of us, but they're not really necessarily important to everybody. I used to get kind of pretty confused because in the 80s, maybe it was actually a little bit before that, but I know the Reagan administration opened arms with the religious right and the moral majority. And by the time the 90s rolled around, when things had become a little bit more secular, it was difficult for Republicans to win a presidential election all of a sudden. And then, of course, the Democrats, on the other hand, have tried to take almost every other social project under the sun, and it has weakened them. And it's gotten to a point where it really helped cost them in this last election. The same is true with churches. They're taking on way too much social issues and trying to tell their members that they're somehow they're supposed to take up the social issue with their leadership. But that's not the way it works. Generally speaking, the way it works, especially in the case of churches, is if you have a relationship with Christ and you talk to him about all these things, you pray to him that he will lead you into the way that you're supposed to go. And unfortunately, the Catholic Church and other churches as well, I don't know, almost don't know diddly squat about the Orthodox Church, but I know there's a lot of Protestant churches that are doing some of the same things as well. But there's so much mission creep and so much tangential social issues these days. I think most of us who are just down to earth and want to make our own decisions, live out our relationship with God, we don't need to hear about all that stuff, and definitely don't need to be guilt-tripped or browbeaten into it or fear-mongered or shamed, whatever the word is. They use all those things in the Catholic Church very well. All right, so point number 3 is basically that this policy of the Catholic Church is basically full of lies and propaganda, basically a diatribe that is was totally misplaced, and was very unfortunate that it happened. I tend to think it's agenda-driven as far as motive goes. I'm aware of a lot of things that the Catholic Church says to the public, and I'm skeptical of many of them. And if you look at the situation, I really think that they have a lot of policies in place that are intended to keep their followers and keep their parishioner numbers high, instead of actually going out and doing the hard work of ministering, or I think the word is proselytizing for Christ. One of those policies, I can't get into all of them for sure today. Some of them are maybe even more controversial, but one of the ways that they keep their church numbers up is through illegal immigration, because a lot of the people that come here that are illegal are from very Catholic nations in Central and South America, and that's one of the ways that they keep their numbers up. But rest assured, there are numbers. Their policy of allowing these people, the peaceful ones, to stay is pretty stupid. I thought about doing like some biblical references here, but I don't want to get too into the weeds on that. Throughout the Old Testament, there's talk about taking care of the poor, the widow, and the orphan. Occasionally, the alien and or the foreigner comes up. God wants us to have compassion on them too. They had some caveats, though, to the foreigners in ancient Israel because there were so many problems with idols back then. But for the sake of my argument, let's just say you're a Christian of any variety and you're so heavenly minded that you're not really of any earthly good, right? And you have a very big heart for the poor and the widow and the orphan, and you say, I've got a huge house, so I'm going to take in some poor and some widows and some orphans, perhaps as many as I can, maybe not so much to the where they're sleeping on top of each other, but I'm going to be there to care for them. And that may work out for a little while, but at what point do they become inconvenient to your family? You know, I mean, it's your home and your family's home. You know, do they start bothering them, which could mean a lot of things, some very serious, some very violent? Do they break your furniture, you break your property? Do they steal, take food out of your fridge that you were set aside for your family and stuff like that? A lot of people would say that voluntary act of compassion was actually a little bit over the board and pretty stupid. So, why would you do that? We're kind of doing the same thing in this country, or at least the Biden administration was, just letting all these people in. And I don't know if Pope Francis liked Biden better because he was Catholic, but Francis always brings all this stuff up whenever Trump is president, so I don't know. The other thing that it is of course, if I haven't been to the Vatican. I don't really have a great desire to go, but I hear that place is heavily, heavily walled, probably from the time that they had a bunch of barbarians and such in Europe, and very high walls. Nobody can get in. Security is great. I don't particularly want to go except maybe to see the art, but of course my wife has some kind of longing for some reason to go there. But he stays in this palatial 1 mile, square mile, or whatever it is, city in Rome, and has all this security, and for him to say all these things is very hypocritical, to say the least. I also don't think that he or his bishop, Zurich, really understand the full brevity, that's not the right word, the full breadth of the situation, I should say. When you let all these people in here, there's rumors of side businesses, or I guess you can call them businesses, or hustles anyway. Obviously there are this is related to drug deals and drug cartels, coyotes where you have to pay money or other things to get people across, or heaven forbid human trafficking, which is a terrible, terrible thing to believe that that's still going on in the Western world even in 2025, and yet we never hear anything at all from this bishop or this pope on those things. Terrible, terrible stuff. People getting sold into slave labor, essentially, and slave sex trades. Very terrible stuff, and yet they never talk about that, and that is a tangential problem with the illegal immigrant deal. So I'm looking at my notes here. I think I've gone over all the nitty-gritty of this, and one last thing, I know because I'm getting close to half an hour already. I knew I'd be talking a long time about this, but it needs to be said. I don't know. I've talked about Bill O'Reilly and Mel Gibson. I've known, like I say, I know some good Catholics. I think a lot of them are down to earth, but I don't know why more of them don't speak out about stuff like this, because their relationship with their church is a relationship that should be perhaps somewhat like their relationship with Christ, except I don't see it. If you've got bad leadership and you're not liking the direction of things going, if you can band together and get into enough numbers, in theory, you should be able to prod these leaders in order to promote a certain change, a desperate change that is needed there. And I don't know why they don't do that. I think a lot of it is because many of them are captured, and maybe they're afraid of their leadership or getting kicked out of their church or ostracized by their family, all as a result of some sort of, guilt trip and fear-mongering, shame, finger-pointing that they maybe have seen throughout their life. A lot of them also don't know anything differently. And it's really sad, because I think they could go ahead and take over things if they could just get enough numbers and get enough people on the right side of things. It's kind of the same thing when it comes to, our government and instituting change at whatever level government. Same thing with the insurance companies. I think people don't demand enough from their health insurance or their auto and home insurance. You're investing something, you're sacrificing something in order to get something in return. And I don't want to make it sound so transactional, but you need to be doing more. If you really want to see good change in life, you really want a Christ-centered relationship individually, it's going to have to change from within and not necessarily from the top. So that's my message to you. I know I'm an outsider, and you might be saying, "Fuck you, Frank. Why are you telling us all this stuff? You don't even belong to the church, and you're never going to join." And well, I'm just telling you, I'm somebody who sees things as an outsider and a third person, and you see how things could be, and then you see how they really are. And you have these leaders just lording it over you for their own agenda and their own propaganda. Something needs to change. And in closing, I would say, fuck Pope Francis and fuck Bishop Zurich. Zurich, by the way, he looks a little bit like J. Pat O'Malley, who used to be an actor on TV, usually guest starred and stuff, but he doesn't have J. Pat O'Malley's charm or lovability, I guess you could say. In fact, with a name like O'Malley, I think he was Irish, and so he was probably Catholic as well. I wonder if he's listening from heaven today. I'll give you a shout out there, J. Pat O'Malley. But anyway, I say that to you. I think Zurich should be making biscuits in the kitchen somewhere, or maybe butlering. I don't know, something other than being a bishop. So, but anyway, that gives you a lot of discussion, a lot of diatribe from me on that. I was pretty upset when I left church on Sunday morning, and nobody should ever leave upset. So anyway, I look forward to hearing from y'all. I don't know. I don't never get any responses from anybody. Maybe I'll actually strike a nerve this time. I don't know. Not trying to offend anybody out there, but certain things need to be said, and things could be so much better than they are, yet people just kind of sit on their hands and don't do anything. And very, very sad about that. So, well, anyway, like always, I just want to say thank you for listening, joining me for a little bit longer show today. Tell your family and friends, hit the subscribe button, share the show with others. Sharing is caring. Send me an instant message or comment on the show. Really look forward to hearing that. Maybe there will be some controversy this time, so maybe. We'll see. But anyway, this is your host, Frank Weber, signing off from the forest of It's a Frankly Hairy podcast. I will see you again here next week for another great episode. So long, take care, love you, bye.